Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton,
I'm Bob Scarborough.
and we are
Uh,
the FAIRtax Guys.
yeah,
Go.
nice. You get one of these scrolling banners, you put it in your hip pocket, or walking down the street, or you stand at a busy intersection in town. You can throw that thing out there and simple, efficient, visible. Just
Or you
don't
go
get
to,
hit by a bus while
or
you're
you
out.
go. I said, or you go to a Wake Forest basketball game.
Hey, that's right. Almost baseball now.
Hey, I know. I've been after you to get that thing on TV at one of the basketball games up there for quite a while.
Might
But
be
I
able to
know.
afternoon game at some point in time.
Yeah, you work the morning shift up there, so you're in bed by the time the game's even starting. So.
Yeah, hours before in some cases. Yeah, it's hard in the summer though, to go to bed too early because it's still daylight until like 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
So
and you
uh,
get one of the little eye mask shades like they get in the amenity kits if you ride first class on a fancy airline.
that's what I need. That's
All
what I
right. Well, if I ever get one of those, I'll bring one home to you. But actually, what you need to do is get them made with your radio station's call letters across the front of them. So radio stations are always promoting and handing out promotional items like that.
I could use one of the old protective masks from the COVID days and just instead of having it here, I'd put it over my eyes.
There you go. All right. Well, let's get cranking here on FairTax Power Radio for another week, which means the first order of business is that we go to congress.gov, put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes at the search bar up at the top, select legislation in the current Congress, and voila. You get a list of what the Congress critters are trying to do to the tax code. And as of the day we are recording this, that search brings back 638 hits. Now, when you consider there's 365 days in a year, and the Congress has been in session since January, and it is now late April, you can see how many, figure out the average of how many proposals to change the tax code per day are being proposed up in Congress, and it'll just flat blow your mind. But let's get started here with HR 2941, 2941, and that is to amend the Internal Revenue Code to improve the historic rehabilitation tax credit and for other purposes. I will bet you, Mr. Scarborough, that you did not know there was even such a thing as a historic rehabilitation tax credit in the tax code. Now, did you?
No, and I'm thinking, I'm pretty historic or maybe prehistoric. Maybe I can benefit from that somehow.
Well, I'm still older than you, but yeah, I don't remember that either. A historic rehabilitation tax credit. Now, the cynic in me wants to say historic rehabilitation. Is that the revisionist history? You go back and change what you don't like.
Ah, now that's funny. That
Oh, mercy. That's Representative Darren LaHood of Illinois.
historical, historical, what was it called? Historical.
Historic rehabilitation tax credit. So maybe that means if you go out and clean the pigeon poop off a statue, that's historic rehabilitation. And again, there's no text in this, so I can't tell exactly what he's talking about. But again, the point is tax credit, tax credit, tax credit, tax credit. We highlight them all the time here on this program. And it's a tax credit is by definition a break that somebody gets that somebody else doesn't get. It's not fair, even if these tax credits are being given for, worthwhile purposes. It's still picking winners and losers. It's still deciding who gets a break and who doesn't. And it's still not fair. It needs to go away and be replaced with a fair tax that treats everybody the same.
That's
Crazy.
that's right. And now you think about historic buildings, for example. My suggestion would be take care of them. And I know we have to go find some of those. We have to try to save. And I agree with this for a downtown. Uh, again, resources within the community should be applied at that level, whether it be financial or labor or whatever it may be. The government involved in that at any level is a question, but that's where all the money ends up. And so you kind of have to say, well, I guess this is right, but in the tax code, it doesn't necessarily have to be there uh, to give you some sort of an incentive. The rehab tax credit is, it picks somebody who may be inclined to get that credit, do the work. It doesn't help me. I'm not in that business.
Oh, mercy. All right. Well, the same Representative LaHood in Illinois is responsible for our next little goodie here on our Congress.gov segment, H.R. 2940, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow an investment credit for certain water reuse projects. Historic rehabilitation credit, investment credit. There we go. Just more and more stuff in the tax code like that that really doesn't need to be there. We need to treat everybody the same. Get rid of it, replace it with a fair tax.
Yeah, what reuse water? What do you mean? Like collect it in a bottle or collect it in a pool and use it somewhere else?
Certain, it just says certain water reuse projects. Again, there's no text in this, so I can't tell exactly what he's dealing with. But if you reuse water, in fact, all water kind of gets reused. You got a certain amount of it, and it gets reclaimed and recycled and refiltered. And I mean, even the cruise ships can make drinkable water out of seawater. So that's reusing water like that. So it's just crazy that it has to be in the tax code. Let's keep going. HR 39, check that, 2932. 2932. Would you believe another tax credit? This is to amend the Internal Revenue Code to establish a tax credit for the production of aviation gasoline that is free of tetraethyl lead. We've had lead-free gasoline for our cars for a long time. I do know that if you go out and fill up your Cessna 172 at the airport, you will, in all likelihood, get what they call 100 low lead, 100 octane aviation gasoline that has some lead in it, but not a great deal. But now this bill wants to establish a tax credit if you can figure out a way to make aviation gasoline that isn't totally lead free. Good luck.
Yeah, and you talk about the environment and what lead has been taken out of commercial or passenger vehicles, et cetera. Uh, to know that that's still possible to have some lead in aviation fuel.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference is between an airplane engine and a car engine, that the airplane engine still needs a little bit of lead in it, but
Yeah.
whatever. They're going to try to use the tax code to encourage the production of lead-free aviation gasoline. Okay, let's scoot on. HR 2925 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to extend the exemption from the excise tax on alternative motorboat fuel sold as supplies for vessels or aircraft to include certain vessels serving only one coast. We've seen this one before. This is Aaron Bean right here in Florida 4. So let me read that again. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to extend the exemption. Apparently, there's an exemption from excise tax on alternative motorboat and aircraft fuel, and they want to extend that exemption to vessels that are used only on one coast. Of course, Florida here has two coasts already.
Right.
And it's just, I remember way back at an article for National Airlines that was based here in Florida. We fly from coast to coast to coast, which is yes, I'm old enough to remember that. But there we go. To amend
Yeah.
the Internal Revenue Code to extend this exemption on the excise tax for that particular kind of fuel. One more, HR 2912. This is to amend the Internal Revenue Code to establish a wealth tax and for other purposes. And that is a rabbit hole that I'm just not going to go down. But we need to get rid of that idea and replace it with a fair tax as well. That's Representative Summer Lee of Pennsylvania.
Keep on putting it in the tax code. That way it just all gets jammed up and we get more and more confused about what and how it impacts us. If it impacts us, how does it impact us? The easiest way to do it is to rip the tax code out by the roots, get rid of the Internal Revenue Service, make it a museum for inane ideas and go on and get the fair tax enacted. And I think people will really, it's almost like a certain level of pressure is taken off of someone when the tax code, you think about the tax code not being there, then you can actually calm yourself down just by thinking about it.
Okay, well, let's get going here. Let's finish up our series as we're going through the objections to the fair tax raised by WatchGuard Capital in the video that we were pointed to on YouTube a while back. So well, let's get cranking here on point number 8. His guy says getting rid of the estate tax will increase wealth inequality, which is expanding fast enough on its own. Now, this objection obviously is rooted in the philosophical belief that wealth inequality is a bad thing, that redistributing wealth to make things fair is a legitimate function of the federal government. A lot of people do actually think that way. There are a lot of people who don't. There are people who think that the individuals are entitled to whatever wealth their education, skills, experience, and work ethic allows them to earn. That's a different debate for a different day. Has nothing to do with the fair tax. So we're not going to debate whether wealth inequality is good, bad, or indifferent. But what's relative here is that getting rid of the estate tax, as the fair tax would do, it would have almost no impact on federal revenue. IRS data shows in recent years the estate tax has accounted for less than 1% of federal revenue collections. So this is not really a big one in terms of how much impact it's going to have. But to say that we need to get rid, they can't support the fair tax because we need the estate tax to make things fair is that's stretching it.
Well, and the estate tax is taxing already taxed assets.
Uh-huh.
And that's back to the taxing more and more and more. And with the fair tax, you buy something new, you pay the fair tax. You buy something used, you don't pay the fair tax because it's already been taxed. And this is just, it's just crazy.
Go ahead. Fair tax.
Go ahead.
Now, continue. I've done the first part.
I was going to say what's relevant here is getting rid of the estate tax, as the fair tax would have almost no impact on federal revenue. IRS shows that in recent years, the estate tax has counted for less than 1% of federal revenue collections. 1%.
Yes. We bring you that point twice to make sure you understand it. Now, fair tax advocates often argue against the estate tax by pointing out there are cases where heirs have to sell the family farm or the family business in order to pay the tax. Now, in the video, our investment advisor friend tries to diminish that argument, pointing out that very few estates involve a family farm. It's all mostly commercial farms now. And he concludes that protecting family farms is a really weak excuse for robbing the federal government its ability to confiscate and redistribute up to 40% of the stocks, bonds, real estate, things like cash and life insurance that are normally found in a person's estate. And apparently this guy has no sympathy whatsoever for those heirs who do indeed have to sell the farm or the family business in order to pay the estate tax, however few of them there may be.
That's right. Quick side note here. It's interesting that people who think that a 23% fair tax rate is exorbitantly high have no problem with the estate tax whose top rate can reach 40%. The question of whether or not the federal government should be in the business of redistributing wealth in order to make things fair will never be resolved to everyone's satisfaction. It's not our fight in the fair tax movement, but there are a couple of indisputable facts in play here. One is that careful estate planning can minimize the impact of the estate tax, and that our writer of this, our producer of this video's company, profits from providing that very service. It's no surprise that this man wants to see the estate tax retained. Two is that there is no escaping the fair tax when heirs spend the wealth that they inherit. Perhaps those who think that the government should be in the wealth redistribution business should be supporting the fair tax because the cash comes from the inheritance to the offspring and the issue of the person who has passed. And you have all this money sitting around, you're probably going to go buy something.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's keep going. 9 and 10 are kind of related. Point 9 says that people will commit tax fraud by buying big ticket items outside the United States. Now, I've got to give credit where it's due here. I asked Jade Wiley to take a look at this particular objection. So this is basically his answer. He says the bottom line, trying to evade the fair tax like that is simply not going to work. Suppose you decide you're going to evade the fair tax by buying your new Volvo in Sweden. Now, first, you'll pay a lot in travel costs to get over there. Then you'll have to arrange to get that new Volvo shipped back to the United States, which isn't going to be cheap. But even if avoiding the fair tax on that new Volvo would save you money, more than you'd spend in travel and shipping costs, it's still not going to work. Jade says that when the car reaches a U.S. port, it will have to go through the normal customs process. And at that point, they'll determine whether this is a business purchase or a consumer retail purchase. If it is a consumer retail purchase, the fair tax will be charged at the port when you import the car. So now you spend a lot of money on plane tickets and shipping for nothing. You still have to pay the fair tax in order to get your car through customs and into the United States. How about that?
Crazy. But true. I mean, there are going to be people and entities that are out there and try to circumvent the fair tax in some way. But why? You're going to be paying a certain amount of money for whatever the item is that you're purchasing. But at the same time, your tax liability is only going to be at the point of purchase for the federal part of taxes that you pay. So you're going to benefit at some level because of the overall efficiency of the fair tax.
Yeah, now Jade makes the example of buying a new Volvo in Sweden. The same process, though, is going to apply to any other consumer purchase made overseas, even ones that are made online, or you order directly from an offshore company without ever having to leave the country. Again, when the item gets to the United States, goes through the normal customs process, the fair tax will be collected. So trying to evade the fair tax by buying things in other countries simply will not work. Thank you, Jade Wiley. Point 10 is kind of an extension of that. It says it promotes consumption outside our borders. The fact that 9 and 10 are so similar tells me that our friend, the investment analyst or advisor, was running out of reasons to oppose the fair tax. He wanted the list of 10. So he just kind of made number 10 an extension to number 9. As noted above, when you make a purchase of an item outside the United States, when it reaches our border, goes through customs, fair tax is collected, and it gives absolutely no incentive for people to shop outside the United States. But I tell you, let's dig into what this guy's summary was all about. He made an interesting quote, kind of summarizing all of his positions here. And he said that this is a quote: "I can literally feel the political campaign and lobbyist dollars flowing around in every word of it. Have at it, sir."
Well, an insane claim that our friend makes. This one has to be the most outrageous. Think about it for a minute. He's saying, I oppose the fair tax because it's infested with lobbyists.
Well, that is laughable.
I'll wait for a minute while you think to exactly what is happening with the tax code we talk about every week on the show.
Yes, if a lobbyist infestation is a reason to oppose a tax system, you must vehemently oppose the income tax. It is indisputable that the tax code is one of the most heavily lobbied issues in all of Washington. The numbers are up there at opensecrets.org if you want to look them up, and I did look up some of them. This is interesting. For 2024, out of 80 different general issue areas, taxes were the fourth most heavily lobbied issue when ranked by the number of clients involved. Now, an interesting statistical oddity here. In the year 2024, there were 2,024 different clients who hired 4,733 different lobbyists to lobby on taxes. Now, only the federal budget and appropriations, healthcare, and defense issues drew more clients than taxes when you're talking about people hiring lobbyists to try to have their way with the tax code. Wow. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm amazed that there's a couple of thousand clients that hired almost double, a little higher than double number of lobbyists to see. They're swarming all over creation there in Washington. I don't think you could pass somebody in the hall that wasn't coming to or going towards a representative's office with a piece of paper in their hand that says, here's what my client wants to see. It's just insane. 4,733. When you rank,
I guess there's so many different areas of the tax code that different lobbyists would specialize in different areas. So if I'm, Boeing, for example, I'll hire this lobbyist to go deal with this issue, and a different lobbyist to go deal with another issue, and a different lobbyist to go deal with another issue, which probably explains why there are more lobbyists than clients in doing this with the tax code.
It's just an amazing number. When you rank the number of lobbyists involved rather than the number of clients, taxes were the second most heavily lobbied issue, trailing only federal budget and appropriations issues. Well, the income tax, literally billions of dollars are spent every year trying to buy favorable tax treatment for whale-heeled clients. Innumerable reelection campaigns have been financed by those billions of dollars. It's $14,000 or so a day that the congressman and the senator has to accumulate on average.
It's insane.
All the lobbyist cash that the income tax system attracts is one of the major reasons that the Washington elite establishment is fighting so hard against the fair tax, almost like a David and Goliath scenario. They want to keep their gravy train rolling.
Yeah, we've seen what happens too. You get a bloated, inefficient, invasive, intrusive, fraud-prone, error-prone tax system that nobody understands in its entirety. Again, as we point out here every week on FAIRtax Power Radio, it is brimming with all kinds of exclusions and deductions and credits and loopholes that some people get, others don't. I've said this many times. You could not start from scratch and design a worse way to fund the government if you tried.
It's not mentioned in the video that we've been talking about for the last number of weeks. It was noted in the comments that the producer of the video and the star of that favors a flat income tax. Our friend, the late Ron Malero, described the flat income tax as the lobbyist full employment act, and he's right. Before the ink is dry on a flat tax act, big money clients will have all their lobbyists busy trying to rebuy all the special provisions they managed to get into the current tax code. How do you know that will happen? We've seen the movie before. In 1986, under President Ronald Reagan, the tax code was flattened out, but it didn't stay flat long. Lobbyist cash turned a relatively flat, and I'll insert the word here, income tax code
into you go.
Mess we have today. Implement a flat tax, it's guaranteed that the same process will start all over again. Income tax has to go. Go. Rip it out by the roots, send it on down the line, burn it in a big pile, get rid of the Internal Revenue Service, 16th Amendment later, and all of a sudden you have an opportunity to see some real innovation take place in the American business and individual population. Finish up there, Maxton.
Oh, I'm saying, let me just repeat this guy's quote. I can literally feel the political campaign and lobbyist dollars flowing around in every word of it. The only thing I can say about that is that truer words were never spoken about the income tax. Good grief. If you're going to oppose a tax system because it's infested with lobbyists, you cannot support the income tax. You have to support the fair tax, which is going to get rid of the lobbyist infested income tax that we've certainly got already. I mean, this has been an interesting little trip through this
Yeah.
guy's video and all of the different little things that he's come up with. And I mean, I get the idea that he's really just kind of trying to come up with stuff that sounds good, that isn't necessarily the case. And again, this is a guy, and I don't know how much of his business is actually, involved in advising people about taxes. So I don't know how heavily invested he is in keeping the current tax system, but he certainly part of his business is providing, tax services to help minimize the impact of the income tax on that one. So his business would at least be partially impacted if the fair tax was implemented and the income tax went away. So this is a guy that's just protecting his livelihood. You can't fault him for that. But he is using stuff that just is not have a great deal of truth value in it in his arguments against the fair tax. Every now and then, it's just educational to go through some of the arguments that people make and keep making and keep making and keep making, even though a lot of them have been debunked thoroughly. You still continue to hear this stuff about the fair tax, and we, as on the fair tax side, have to continue to respond to it because people are still hearing that stuff.
Well, the other side of that too is a lot of people don't dig into the fair tax to the whole concept. They just hear, 30-second soundbite here. They may see some politician talking about, changing the tax code, et cetera. We're working. People are busy with their lives and doing things. And as I've said on previous episodes of the program, we hear all of this all the time, repeating it. And folks are starting to take a greater consideration of the fair tax, of HR 25, and asking key questions that there's greater interest in online messages. The Facebook Messenger. There are several entities under the fair tax banner that are out there, and we see people that are actually beginning to ask questions, deep questions, and having substantive conversations about it, which I think is a good thing. It's positive. And we know that there are some politicians that are going, we really need to do something about this deficit. And how the heck is that going to happen? Is the fair tax answer for that somehow to diffuse some of the runaway expenses that we're experiencing with the government? How are we going to pay $36 trillion back in debt?
I'm not sure we're going to, but again, I'll just note that the president of the United States is on record as saying he wants to get rid of the income tax. He's starting by, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security benefits. It's not a very big leap to get from that to no tax on any income anywhere. Let's just get rid of the income tax. Of course, again, he wants to replace that revenue with tariffs. But hopefully, if we could at least let's get rid of the income tax, and people can agree on that point, then we can have the discussion on what we're going to replace it with. And when we get there, the fair tax is going to win that argument hands down every time. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio. Again, it's been a fun 4 weeks here going through this guy's video. And so I have no clue what we're going to do next week. We'll come up with something, though, on Fair Tax Power Radio. And we will see you same time, same station here on Fair Tax Power Radio. Thank you again for listening and sharing the videos. That helps us a great deal. Until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the Fair Tax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what do you need from me to get these taxes collected?
Glad you asked, because there is a fair amount of information you need to be aware of.
That's your tax plan?
Oh, no, this is just the revisions for this year's tax plan. What I need from you is you need to keep track of all of your income, as well as any taxes that you've already paid. Also, any gifts that you received or gifts you've given to churches or charities or individuals throughout the entire year. Do you do any side jobs?
Every now and again.
Great, because there's some more information about that right here. Everything you need to know right here. So just simply compile that Send it in to us. Be careful, make sure there's no mistakes. If we do find mistakes were made, we can fine you or, throw you in jail. So you might want to be aware of that.
And what do you need from me?
As an individual, nothing. As a business owner, or if you're doing side jobs, I mean, yes, you would have to collect taxes on that, but, well, it's all right here.
Can I get a copy of that?